Hi, my name is Enjoy Islam with Ayaan Institute, and I am also an SBDI, which is a school bus driver instructor for New York State Education Department. And today we are going to do the pre-trip inspection on our C2 bus, and we're going to start with the engine components and also its linkage and mounting. Before we start, we would like to remind you, follow us at Ayaan Institute on Instagram and also Facebook. Make sure you like our videos, follow us, and also share us on Instagram and Facebook for all your friends and people who need to learn this pre-trip inspection. This is one of the best videos you guys will see, and of course, make sure you share this with everybody and save this, because you will need this for the day of your road exam. So first, we are going to do the general overview of the engine components. We're going to start with the electrical wire harness. Make sure that the electrical wire harness has no cuts, no burns, and it is properly mounted to the sockets. Make sure the sockets are not broken or damaged, and there's no signs of any burns, and of course any smells of any burns. And the sockets cannot be broken or damaged, and it has to be properly mounted to the firewall of the bus. All the mounting bolts and screws cannot be rusted, cracked, or missing. After that, we will move on to our colorful air lines. They cannot have any abrasions, bulges, or cuts, and it has to be properly mounted to the air valve. The air valve cannot be broken or damaged, and it has to be properly mounted to the firewall. Make sure the colorful airlines and of course the air valve have no audible leaks. After that, we're going to generally speak about all the hoses coming from the engine. Make sure there's no abrasions, bulges, or cuts, and no visible leaks. Make sure all the clamps are in the locked position and they're not rusted, cracked, or missing. The engine itself is not broken or damaged, and it is properly mounted to the frame. All the mounting bolts are not rusted, cracked, or missing. Engine is not broken or cracked, and there's no visible leaks from the seams. The leaks that we're looking for is from engine oil, transmission oil, antifreeze, and fuel. After that, we'll check the lubrication of our engine and transmission. Always remember, when you're checking the lubrication, you'll always want to start with the dipsticks. If you have one dipstick, then most likely it's a manual transmission vehicle. If you have two dipsticks, one dipstick will be for the engine. The second dipstick, which will be right next to it, will be for the transmission, which is usually the color red. This vehicle, we only see one dipstick, meaning this is a manual transmission vehicle. So, in order to check the lubrication of the engine oil, the engine has to be off. You would take out the dipstick, clean it, reinsert it, take it back out, and make sure that the oil level is above the refill mark. If the dipstick tube is big enough, we would insert the additional oil from the tube itself. In this case, the tube is very skinny, so we will locate the cab on top of the engine. The cab seems to be on tight, and it's not broken, it's not damaged, and there's no visible leaks. We will insert the additional oil from the engine cap and then recheck the dipstick as necessary. For the transmission dipstick, if we had one, we would make sure we check it with the vehicle on. We take out the dipstick, clean it, reinsert it, and then take it back out to make sure that the transmission oil is above the refill mark. If not, same process. If the tube is big enough, we would add the additional transmission oil through the transmission dipstick tube. And if the tube is skinny, we will locate the transmission oil cap, which is usually around the bottom of the engine area. And we would add the additional oil and then recheck the transmission dipstick as necessary. That concludes our general overview, and now we will check our first component, which will be our power steering pump. We will start with the linkage. We first have our steering shaft, which is not broken, it's not damaged. When we twist on it, cannot have no more than 2-inch or 10 degrees of play. It is properly lubricated in the center here, which you cannot tell at this moment because it's covered, but we will check on the next maintenance check. Over here, it is properly mounted to the 2 universal joints. The 2 universal joints, top and bottom, cannot be broken or damaged, and it also has to be properly greased. The one on the top is covered, and we'll check that on the next maintenance check. The one on the bottom here isn't broken or damaged, and it is properly greased. We have the mounting bolts and screws and bolts, which are not rusted, cracked, or missing. The universal joints, also known as the U-joints, is properly mounted to our steering gearbox. Our steering gearbox is not broken or cracked, and it is properly mounted to the frame. We have mounting bolts 1, 2, 3, 4 that are not rusted, cracked, or missing. There's no visible leaks coming from the steering gearbox. All the bolts on the steering gearbox are not rusted, cracked, or missing. From the gearbox, we have 2 hoses coming out. Both hoses have no abrasions, bulges, or cuts, and no visible leaks. This hose right here is going into our power steering pump. The one on top here is going into our power steering reservoir. Our power steering reservoir is not broken or cracked, and there's no visible leaks. Both caps are on tight. Clamps, not rusted, cracked, or missing, and it's in the locked position. The power steering oil is above the refill mark. If we need additional oil, we would open the cap and insert the additional oil through the cap. The mounting bolts are not rusted, cracked, or missing, and it is properly mounted to the frame with this bracket, which is also not broken or damaged. Our power steering pump, in order to locate it, you will follow this hose coming from the gearbox, or this hose right here coming from the bottom of the power steering reservoir. So as we follow it, we have located our power steering pump, which is located right there, right beside of the engine. And this power steering pump is gear driven because we do not see any belts in the front of the pump, which the belts will be located right around this area. The power steering pump is properly mounted to the engine, and it is not broken or damaged, and there is no visible leaks. All the mounting bolts are not rusted, cracked, or missing. Next, we have our Pitman arm, drag link, and control arm. All 3 are properly mounted to each other, and the Pitman arm is also properly mounted to the steering gearbox, and the control arm is also properly mounted to the wheel well. All 3 are not broken or damaged. All 3 are properly greased at the ends, which is here, 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 and there. They are all secured with the castle nut and the cotter pin. Both castle nut and cotter pin are not rusted, cracked, or missing, and the pin is in the locked position. We have 1, 2, 3 castle nut and cotter pins. Over here we have the mounting bolts, which both are not rusted, cracked, or missing. In the back here we have our steering rod connected to our tie rod. Both are not broken or damaged. Both are properly mounted to each other, and the tie rod is also properly mounted to the wheel well. It is properly greased at the ends, and it is secured with the castle nut and cotter pin. Castle nut and cotter pin is in the locked position, and they're both not rusted, cracked, or missing. Now we are finished with our steering components. Next, we will go on to the suspension system. The suspension system will start right here with our spring hanger in the front, and there's another spring hanger in the back. Both front and back spring hangers are not broken or damaged, and it is properly mounted to the frame. We have our mounting bolts right on the top here, which are not rusted, cracked, or missing. The ones in the back, I can see the mounting bolts from here, and they are also not rusted, cracked, or missing. our leaf springs are properly aligned. There's no crack, missing leaves, and there is no scissoring on the leaves. Scissoring would mean one leaf is crossing the other leaf. And the leaf spring is properly mounted to our spring hanger. The mounting bolt is located right here on the bottom, and it is not rusted, cracked, or missing. In the middle of the leaves, we have two U-bolts. The U-bolts are properly mounted over the leaf spring onto the axle. The two U-bolts are not broken or damaged, and it is properly mounted. The mounting bolts are located on the bottom here, and the mounting bolts are not rusted, cracked, or missing, and it seems to be on tight. Right here we have our saddle. Our saddle is not broken or damaged, and it is in between the U-bolt and the leaf spring, and it seems to be on tight, and it's not loose. Over here we have our shock absorber, which is not broken or cracked, and there is no visible leaks from any hydraulic fluid, and it is properly mounted to the frame. The mounting bolt is located right here, and the mounting bolt is not rusted, cracked, or missing. On the bottom is properly mounted to the bottom of the leaf spring onto our axle. The mounting bolt on the bottom is also not rusted, cracked, or missing. We have our rubber bushings on the top and bottom. Our rubber bushings have no abrasions and no cuts, and the mounting bolts for the bushings are not rusted, cracked, or missing, and it seems to be on tight. Now that concludes our suspension system. Next we'll do our air and axle system. So our air and axle system consists of our next component, which is our air compressor. Our air compressor is located right here beside of the engine. You can tell that it is the air compressor because of all the airlines, the colorful airlines that are coming from it. Make sure that the air compressor is properly mounted, not broken or damaged, and there is no audible leaks. And the mounting bolts are not rusted, cracked, or missing. The airlines coming out from it have no abrasions, no bulges, and no cuts, and of course no audible leaks. Over here we have our high pressure air hose, which is properly mounted to our brake chamber. There's no abrasions, no bulges, no cuts, and no audible leaks. And it is properly mounted again to our brake chamber. Next, we have our ABS wire, which is located right next to the high pressure air line. And the ABS wire right here, it is properly mounted to our brake drum. And there's no cuts or any signs of burns. Our brake chamber is not broken or cracked, and there's no audible leaks, and it's properly mounted to our S-cam bracket. And the mounting bolt has a little bit of rust, and we'll report that to maintenance. But it is on tight. There's no rust streaks and no shiny threads, which would indicate looseness. Over here we have our slack adjuster and push rod. We would pull on it to make sure we're not getting any play. So when you pull on it, you want to make sure there's no play more than 3/4 inch. And make sure it is properly mounted to the brake chamber, and also properly mounted here to the S-cam bracket.